Welcome to Political Trade Secrets, an inside look at campaigns and politics, where we pull back the curtain, look under the hood, and investigate all aspects of politics and how elections are won. Now, here's your host, Dustin Olson.
And welcome to Political Trade Secrets. I'm your host, Dustin Olson. Thank you to everybody for joining us here today. We are really grateful to have you popping in. We're all over the internet, 12 different platforms right now live. And wherever you're at, you can post a comment or question. You also can join this conversation because we're going to be talking about all the what I consider my 7 great follows on social media for alternate takes on the issues facing America and facing the world. I really think that it's important to try to listen to folks, not necessarily agree with them or even endorse what they're saying, but to follow folks who maybe have a little bit of a different perspective on what's going on in the world, usually have a little bit of a different angle, and maybe can give you a different point of view as to how things are going on. So we're going to talk about that today. But first, before we get to that, if wherever you're at on the internet, as I said, you can join the conversation. I'd like to hear from you who some of the great follows you have on Facebook, Twitter, wherever you get your social media at, or YouTube, and just let me know wherever you're at. You can post a comment and question down there below, and we'd love to hear about that. Additionally, if you'd like to be a part of our Facebook community, if you'd like to be part of our Political Trade Secrets community, you can go to politicaltradesecrets.com right now, sign up to be a Political Trade Secrets insider, and you'll get our regular emails. You get all the exclusive stuff that we send out to folks. So please do join us at politicaltradesecrets.com and be a part of the Political Trade Secrets Insider community. And additionally, we're sponsored. We're sponsored by 10centtexting.com today. If you want the best political texting at the best cost, this is the place to go. It's really amazing. You can send rich media. You can send GIFs, the moving pictures. You can send movies. You can send, your 30-second TV ad, whatever it is. You can send any of those things there. And it is, it's one of the best tactics right now on campaigns. Will it be the best one forever? I don't know. But right now, it really is making a difference for campaigns out there. So please do check us out at 10centtexting.com and launch your message today. So, one of the ways that the reason why we do this is because we really do care about our fellow Americans and really being able to be effective citizens. And so we're doing these 7 greats series. So we did the 7 great reads for political insight, where we went through some of the interesting books that you can read to get kind of a take on politics, how it works, get some insight there. Then we also did our recent episode of the 7 great sources for to be informed, to be an informed citizen. And then today we're doing the 7 great follows on social media for alternate takes. And we really do that because we want to help people be the most effective citizens possible. Additionally, we want to help people be powerful political leaders in your local community, in your state, and for our country as well. And one of the ways that all of us together here can do that is by joining the ShareForce. So join ShareForce, make a difference, reignite American patriotism, and you too might be able to help inspire someone to step up, to show up, to speak up somewhere out there in their community and really make a difference. And who knows, if they watch this program, they'll be inspired to get a little bit more engaged, and maybe they'll be the one who steps up and makes a difference in their community at some point in the near future. So please do share it wherever you're at. If you're on Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, you name it, wherever you're at, please do share the program and inspire somebody to make a difference today. So with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and jump into the topic at hand. As I said, this is in part of our 7 Greats series, and really, this is not exhaustive. Online, I probably follow, dozens of people that actually would say fit into this category. But really today I'm focusing on people, not just people I like to follow, but people who generally, even if you agree with them or if you don't agree with them, they look at things and they have just a little bit of a different point of view. Now, I'd like to think that Political Trade Secrets, we provide that. We provide kind of an inside view from people. Both myself and Sean, we've worked in politics for decades, and we know how politics works. We know how the media works, and we know how campaigns in particular work. So we can give you a little bit of a different perspective than you might get elsewhere. So as we go through this, I really do think it's helpful to have these kinds of folks so you can consider their point of view. Now, I want to be really clear. I don't endorse, everything any one of these people say. I don't actually endorse them, period. I just find that they tend to look at things with a little bit of a different perspective, and that's very helpful because for myself as a political strategist, one of the things that I find is if you can see the field, if you can see your world from as many vantage points as possible, you can get closer to having a 360-degree view of things, and you can have a little bit more clarity. And I just find that to be very helpful. So there's going to be people here. I tend to pay attention to people who are more maybe lean to the right or might be in the middle. And I have a few people who are definitely on the left as well. And again, like I said, I don't endorse everything that they say, nor do I endorse them necessarily. However, I do find that it's helpful to have a few people that you follow to get alternate takes from what you're going to get from what we call the polarized media industrial complex. You have this polarized media that's everywhere, whether you're watching Fox News or you're watching MSNBC or just any of the mainstream media is definitely part of that is the polarized media complex, and they really do make everything much more polarized and much more blind, honestly. People just offer knee-jerk responses to things, cookie cutter views of things. And, there's some, people on both sides who do that. There's definitely a lot on the left because that's pretty much a very large groupthink. But I do think it's very helpful to do this. And the people that we've chosen for this list are folks who are particularly, they're not particularly predictable as to necessarily how they're going to talk about something when they talk about anything that's big in the world. And it's, again, not exhaustive. I would love for you to share with us, some people that you like to follow or organizations that you like to follow that give you kind of like, oh, that's an interesting perspective. That's an interesting take on stuff. So, share your ideas. My honorable mentions, I'm going to have 7 of the great follows, but then I'm going to have my honorable mentions. There is as many honorable mentions as there are the 7 greats. So, I have a feeling that's going to be the same for you as well, that you're going to have a lot. So I'd love to hear from you. But, this is the idea that we're going to get a lot of different perspectives from different people. And then, that in a way kind of gives you the sense that you almost can see the matrix, that you can see all the different ways that people are looking at stuff. Now, they're going to be on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. There's a bunch of other places that people might end up, Rumble, places like that. So without further ado, before I go into the 7, I'm just going to mention we're also sponsored by Grassfire. Grassfire is the preeminent paid grassroots organization in the country. In particular, they provide canvassing. They provide petitioning, they provide live calling. Also, they fuel 10centtexting.com. But if you really want to have the best representation, people, it's going to be real people talking to voters about you as a candidate, or about the issue that you have an issue campaign, or they will be talking to voters to sign your petition to get your issue or your candidacy on the ballot. It's really important to have people who you are really confident in and that you can be comfortable representing you, because let's say you're running for U.S. Senate. The only person that most voters will ever meet is somebody who represents you maybe at their door or represents you outside a grocery store getting their name on a petition. And if that person isn't to the level that you would want running for the U.S. Senate, well, then, that's not a great situation. So check out Grassfire LLC. You can go to grassfire.us for a complimentary consultation. Just schedule it there and be happy to talk with you and get that set up today. So without further ado, I'm going to go on to our 7 great follows for alternate takes on social media. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show my screen, kind of like I did with the 7 great sources, and just take you through what these look like. Okay. All right. So I've got right here, this is one of the ones we're going to come to in a moment. The first person I'm going to mention is Elon Musk. Now, I don't know exactly what Elon Musk's his actual politics are. I get the sense he might be slightly libertarian, but I really do find that he has very interesting takes. Sometimes they're so interesting and so weird, frankly, that you have no idea what he's talking about. But I do think that's kind of healthy to check that out. And got great couple of questions and a couple of folks who are saying hello. So Ryan, thank you for saying hello, and glad to have you back. Thank you for your comments, and Robert, thank you for the question. Do you post the 7 series on your webpage? We do. Those will be updated next week or so. They haven't been updated yet, but we'll have the whole series up there as well, and we'll probably add more. I'd be interested in what people think would be good ones to add to that. But thank you for the comments. And Robert, in particular, I know that you follow the news and you're on the other side of the aisle than I am. But I'd be interested in knowing some of the great follows that you have out there, that people that you find give you a little bit of a different take. I'm guessing we might be one of those. And we do appreciate that and appreciate you following the program. So Elon Musk, some of the stuff he has doesn't make any sense, but at least maybe I'm not quite to the level that he's at. But I look at this one, Elon Musk, he posted this the other day. Population collapse is potentially the greatest risk to the future of civilization. Now, I assume most people here know who Elon Musk is. He is the CEO or chairman of numerous cutting edge companies, from SpaceX to Tesla to, he also helped start PayPal, to just so many different things that have the potential of changing the world or have already changed the world. So he sees things from a lot of different perspectives than most people out there. And when he tweets this, with population collapse is potentially the greatest risk to the future of civilization, well, that's something that's interesting. He's talking about that. I've heard a few other people talk about it, but it's not something that's huge. And he posts this Wall Street Journal article: U.S. population growth, an economic driver, because it is, grinds to a halt. And that's an interesting take that he has on that. So I just find it very interesting, and he's also humorous at times, and doesn't make sense to me at some times. But that's Elon Musk. I recommend people follow him to see what the genius is thinking. And Robert, I see the suggestion, the Great Battlefield podcast. I've not checked it out, but I definitely will check that out, and look forward to doing so. Now, my second person that I've got is. You probably don't think of him as being somebody who is a social media follow. However, I would say that that's pretty much exclusively where I see most of his content. So Tucker Carlson, host of Tucker Carlson Tonight, and has been in journalism, right-leaning journalism, for a very long time. Again, like I said, with all these folks, Tucker has been in the news a lot in the last month or so, and a lot of controversy and everything else. And so you don't have to agree with everything he's saying. However, one of the things that's going to be true about all these folks is they're adding new things to the conversation. They're saying stuff, even if you agree with them on most everything, they're talking about the things you agree about from a different angle with a different perspective. And he does this consistently. So for myself, I watch the show every once in a while, but I generally end up watching the segments from his program. As you can see here, they have numerous segments. So his team over there at Tucker Carlson Tonight, they are particularly good at quickly getting the segments. So he does the monologues, he does segments, and they quickly, sometimes even before the show is over, they have those segments up on social media, and they're getting tons of traffic. Now, it's alleged that there's a little bit of shadow banning that he's been experiencing. However, it is he's always offering a slightly different take on stuff than what most people are thinking about, and they get their stuff out there very quickly. It's on all the different platforms: Twitter, YouTube, Google. But it's going to be a little bit of a different take, and I think he has Mark Stein on this one. Mark Stein is somebody who I think is a little bit more like that, and says things in an interesting way. So that's the second one. Ryan says, I always make it home from work after his show. Ugh. Well, this is the great thing is most of the best segments, as well as his monologue, almost always end up on his Twitter feed, on YouTube, within moments of that happening. So within the hour, you can check him out online and help, and maybe even fight a little bit of the shadow banning that he has experienced. The next person that I think is this is number 3, the great follow that I would recommend is Scott Adams, and you can find him on Twitter at Scott Adams Says. And he's the creator of Dilbert. I've mentioned him a few times. His book Win Bigly made it into our 7 great reads for political insight, because he's somebody who's coming from a business background, from being the creator of Dilbert, being a cartoonist, but somebody who's commented on workplace situations and kind of the idiotic situations you have in large organizations. And he brings a different eye to politics, and he started talking about politics a lot in the last few years. So Twitter, it's at Scott Adams Says, and then on YouTube, it's Real Coffee with Scott Adams, and he does his every day. He does. He started out on Periscope, which no longer exists, which was bought by Twitter, and Twitter has absorbed it. He does the daily live stream, much like we do. He talks about the news, and he brings to it a much different perspective. He says he's left of Bernie, though he generally is popular with conservatives. So there you go. He's coming at it from lots of different perspectives. Very interesting. And he looks at things from the perspective of economics. He looks at things from the perspective of persuasion. He talks a lot about being a trained hypnotist and how he brings that into his how he looks at things. And he talks about persuasion. And one of the things we recommended his book Win Bigly in the great reads, but I would recommend his whole, what I call his trilogy of effectiveness books. His first book is How to Lose Almost Everything and Still Win Big, kind of the story of my life, by Scott Adams. And then his second book in that trilogy is Win Bigly, which is about persuasion in the world where facts don't matter. That's the subtitle. And he goes through and he looks at Donald Trump, and he looks at how effective he was and persuasive, and how he was able to win the presidency. It's something that he predicted that he would do very early on. One of the first people that I saw who was saying that. And then finally his book Loser Think, which is all about critical thinking and how we have a lot of these biases that cause us to make bad decisions. Anyway, he's a great person to follow. I'm just going to take a look at some of the things he might have here today. Yeah, this will be interesting. Pelosi is sending all the Republicans to the vet to get neutered. Let's see how many wag and jump in the car. That's interesting. The low value take on the pandemic is pretending to be confused at why tactics changed as we got more data. That's an interesting take. And I've seen a few people, I'm on the right, but I've seen a few people who, not that I agree with stuff that's happening out there right now, but when there's more data, you make different decisions, and that makes some sense there. So those are a few things. He's on Locals, which is a subscription-based platform where you can have your own communities. We've looked at maybe signing up to do that for Political Trade Secrets. And then, as I said, on YouTube as Real Coffee with Scott Adams. So that's Scott Adams, and a very interesting perspective for sure. So next, let's go to number 4. And I have to admit, on number 4 here, I don't listen to him as much as some folks, but Joe Rogan and the Joe Rogan Experience. I'm going to go over to YouTube for this one. He definitely has a different take than most people on stuff. You get the sense that he's conservative on some things, and he is, liberal on some things. He's right down the middle on some things, and that's just how it is. So here you go, Joe Rogan Experience. It's going to be mostly the podcast. You can listen to it on Spotify. It's big news when he became one of the kind of cornerstones of Spotify's podcasting, and then he does the video version of it on YouTube, and it's a great place to get his take on stuff. It's almost always different. I see that he's going to be doing a new stand-up comedy tour coming soon. So he's a stand-up comedy guy. He used to, be in I think mixed martial arts or whatever else. He's just had very different experiences. Of course, he's been on television, so very different perspective on stuff. And again, you don't have to agree with them 100%, but you're going to have somebody who maybe is going to have a different take on it that's going to have you have an aha moment to be able to talk about that in a little bit of a different way. And the reason why I think this is important as political leaders is that if you're not adding to the conversation, if you're not adding something new to the conversation, then you're just going to be drowned out. If you're just parroting what all the national Republicans or all the national Democrats are saying, whichever party you're in, you're not going to get noticed. You're not going to move the ball. So you want to look at things from a slightly different perspective. Okay, going on to the next one is somebody that most folks here probably don't know, but if you do, extra points for that. Going back to Twitter, he has both a podcast and he has a pretty active Twitter account. He's simply at Naval. This is Naval Ravikant, and Naval Ravikant is an investor. I think he does venture capitalism and is very much involved in the tech sector. A lot of people consider him to be one of the smartest people in Silicon Valley. And Robert says the social media and politics podcast. Excellent. I will check that out as well. And Ryan asks, do you have a Discord channel? We don't, but that's something interesting that we've thought about. So thank you for the suggestion. So Naval Ravikant, as I said, he's an investor. He's in the tech sector. He's generally just viewed as one of the smartest people in Silicon Valley with interesting takes on all sorts of different things. This is the kind of stuff he does. So he has a tweet thread here. This is all very bite-sized chunks of information. A number of the people I've mentioned already on the list talk about Naval Ravikant as the person that they go to get a different take on things. Well, unfortunately, it's taking a second to load here, but so how to get rich without getting lucky. And he has just a whole stream of thoughts here that are all, I won't go through too many, but I'll pick out a couple. First one he has, seek wealth, not money or status. Wealth is having assets that earn while you sleep. Money is how we transfer time and wealth. Status is your place in the social hierarchy. Next thing he has, understand that ethical wealth creation is possible. If you secretly despise wealth, it will elude you. And then he has, ignore people playing status games. They gain status by attacking people playing wealth creation games. So there's a bunch of bite-sized thoughts that he has. And then I'm going to go to his website here. It's nav.al, just, Naval. And there he has his podcast, which he's tackling very interesting, like big issues that affect all sorts of different policies. They're more, I would call it a meta level. It's like high level stuff. The beginning of infinity, rational optimism is the way out. Pessimism seems like an intellectually serious position. It's easy to extrapolate how things will get worse. Anyway, just lots of different things, and you can expect them to be very thought out and completely different than what most people are going to say. So if you want to juice your understanding of the world, then I would recommend checking out at Naval on Twitter, and then the Naval podcast as well. I'm going to go to YouTube again. This next person is kind of a YouTube phenom, and you know him. It's Jordan B. Peterson, Dr. Peterson, and he's on everything. Is at Twitter. He's at Jordan B. Peterson, and then also on YouTube, he's at Jordan B. Peterson, and he is, uh, he's a psychologist. He is very well read in philosophy as well as history. And he's written a couple of great books, the 12 Rules for Life book, his new book, Beyond Order. But he talks a lot about psychology and how it affects people's decision making. He's Canadian, so he has a different perspective from that perspective for us as Americans. But he just always has something interesting to say. He gets really deep on issues, and I just highly recommend people check that out and listen to Dr. Peterson. And as I said, he has really become a phenom years ago on YouTube, and it's really amazing. He has 4 million or so subscribers here. He has 440 videos. He has a lot of content, but he's former Harvard professor. He's just a very different perspective on things. I have no idea exactly what his politics are, but he seems to be somewhat to the right at times and somewhat to the left. But you can expect to have different takes on things that might expand your view. Talks a lot about mythology and belief systems and how they affect people's decisions, which is is just what you would expect. So the next one I have is number 7. And this one is not an individual. However, I think a lot of you probably already follow them. And it's the Babylon Bee. The Babylon Bee, the fake news you can trust. It is a little bit scary. And what they have found is that the actual reality is a little bit too close to satire. And you've probably heard about all the social media companies out there banning the Babylon Bee at times because they don't understand that these are jokes. It's really funny. And I see a couple comments here. Yeah, so he's talking about Jordan Peterson. He genuinely wants to help people, and I think that's a great take. It's very clear, and probably that clinical psychologist perspective. He really wants to help people live the best lives that they can, and talking about things that in this modern society and everything being woke that has become in some cases not allowed to talk about. But he really talks a lot about personal responsibility, which is something that is controversial, unfortunately, in today's politics. So here on the Babylon Bee, it is the funny thing is that they get way too close to reality with their stuff. Like DC rebrands Wonder Woman as Wonder Person who menstruates. It's a Christian website, so they always have some things that are Christian related. Church's rapidly aging singles group finally promoted to seniors group. It's good church humor. Hardworking plumber looking forward to paying for his neighbor's gender studies degree. That's good. Anyhow, so that's the Babylon Bee. I'm sure people enjoy that as well. It's a great source. So now I'm going to go to the honorable mentions, and the honorable mentions, I'm not going to go find them on here, but I have just as many. I mentioned in the 7 great sources to be informed that if you're following him on Twitter in particular, you're going to get up to the date takes on what's going on. He's a former intel officer and he's military. Jack Posobiec. He used to be at One America News, and I believe he's moved. I mentioned it in the Great Sources episode where he moved to. Anyway, Jack Posobiec is always on top of whatever's going on in the news, and he has a slightly different take on it. He seems to be pretty well-versed in China policy and China relations, so interesting perspective there. Other one that I didn't make it into this top 7, though I would love to put it in the top 7, is Thomas Sowell, but really it's honestly Thomas Sowell fanboy accounts. There's a whole group of people out there who love Thomas Sowell. I would say I'm one of them. Thomas Sowell is 90 years old, I believe, today. He is an economist. He worked with Milton Friedman, decades ago. He grew up in Harlem and, went to the Marines, and it wasn't until later that he went back to college and he got his degree and then became a doctor and a professor, and one of the most brilliant people when it comes to economics. And he's really big, having grown up in, he's African American, and growing up in Harlem, the schools in the 1930s were better than the schools became in the 60s. And he talks a lot about, how the Great Society policies in the 60s really haven't been great for a lot of communities, and how that we really do need to have school choice. But very, very, very great. But there's all these Thomas Sowell fanboy accounts, is what I call them, and they're just people who love Thomas Sowell, so they tweet out quotes from him, and then they cut out interviews from interviews he's done over the years, and they put them out there. So it's every time you watch one of those, you are smarter after that. And then one of those places that I think is probably one of the places I have seen most of the Thomas Sowell interviews I've seen is Uncommon Knowledge from the Hoover Institute, and that's on YouTube. And they always have interesting interviews with people from all spectrums, but it does tend to be a little bit to the right, but really going into more depth, I would say, on those issues as they, spend like 20, 30 minutes talking to one person about their life and the issue, whatever they're talking about. As I said, Thomas Sowell's a frequent guest there. Next, I would say, and he's humorous, and I love his podcast, the one with Greg Gutfeld. And of course, he's on TV as well, which I rarely see him on TV, but I do like to follow him on Twitter. I like to follow him on actually Locals is another place that I follow Greg Gutfeld. He always has a different take on stuff. He always has a little bit more of an interesting, funny take on things as well, which is great. Makes it a little bit more interesting. So I recommend Greg Gutfeld as somebody to follow. Somebody on the left that I think is interesting and will surprise you every once in a while. I don't watch a show too often, but I do find he tends to break with his side of the aisle, which is Bill Maher. Bill Maher with Real Time with Bill Maher on HBO. I can't stand the guy. I think he's smarmy. However, he does have a tendency to kind of get to the heart of things about where his side in particular are full of you know what, and then he'll skewer everybody, but he clearly is somebody who doesn't align with me, but I find it interesting to see what his take on stuff is. The next person that I think generally is going to come down with the same policy positions as most people on the right, but he has a little bit more of a thoughtful take on it. The only reason he didn't make it into the top 7 for me is because he generally has the standard conservative point of view. But that's Ben Shapiro. I think Ben Shapiro has a very has an interesting way of getting attention and thinking through things, and very helpful. If you remember, I did an episode on what the heck is critical race theory anyway, and it was actually an article from 2012 that I found from Ben Shapiro before everybody's talking about this, where he actually broke down the history of that idea and where it came from, and highly interesting. And then the last one I put on there is us, Political Trade Secrets. I think we do take a little bit of a different perspective from being people who've worked on campaigns, who have worked inside politics, who've worked in the sausage making of the media and have a sense for how it works, and can tell if something's a little bit of BS that you're seeing in the news. So I want to look at these comments that we're getting here. So interesting. So Ryan says, I am currently reading his book, Late Talking Children, one of his books delving into children, his own child too. Interesting. I assume that's for, is that for Jordan Peterson? And if not, that's for Thomas Sowell. Interesting. That is, Thomas Sowell's books they're dense. They're very well read or very well written, but they are, weighty subjects in my opinion. So I'm sure there's great ones that I've missed, and again, if you're watching live or after the program, would love to have people post your thoughts as to what are other great follows to get alternate takes on things. Who are other people they see all the same things that we're seeing, but they see a little bit more, they see it a little bit differently. They can give you a different take that can kind of give you just that little bit of an extra of an edge that helps us understand our world just a little bit better, or at least understand it from different perspectives so that we can navigate it better and actually be ultimately more influential, more persuasive, and really be able to make a greater difference. Because I would say that is ultimately, just my final thought on all this is that it's ultimately for the people here that want to be effective citizens of this country, and for the people who want to step up, to show up, to speak up as powerful political leaders, the thing that all these people have in common is that they add something new to the conversation. If you just say the same thing and parrot the same thing that political leaders on the left or the right are saying all the time, you're not adding to the conversation. You're also not going to have any distinction. No one's going to actually notice you. So if you want to be that leader who is adding something new to the conversation, something a little bit different, something that moves the ball forward, looking at other people who are doing that, who are taking alternate takes, and honestly, what is foundational to why we even do political trade secrets is First Amendment rights, and making sure that we're using that right. Because if you don't use a right, it doesn't really exist. You have to use it. You have to express it in order to have that right be alive. And that's why we speak up. So it's important to use your First Amendment right to add to the conversation, to make a difference through speaking up and speaking out on things. And that's ultimately what I think you can learn from these folks who are ultimately brave by saying something that's different from what the crowd is. We've had a couple of episodes, one last week, on how polling works or doesn't work and what problems are going on in polling. One of the things that impacts polling is that if you do a poll and your poll says something different than what the rest of the public opinion polls that the mainstream media puts out there, if it says something different, if you're one of those other pollsters and you're like, my polling keeps telling me something different than what everybody's saying, you do not put that poll out. You do not release it. You do not want to be the odd man out. So there's a certain kind of groupthink that happens. It takes bravery and courage to step up and to say something that's a little bit different than what everybody else is saying. So that's why I love all the folks who are willing to say something a little bit differently. It doesn't mean I endorse what they're saying or even like what they're saying. However, they're saying it is what makes free speech alive, and them providing a different take is ultimately courageous. And it's an opportunity for all of us to be able to learn how we can also add something new to the conversation, to move to move the ball forward, be different, and to make that difference. So hopefully you got something from that. Ryan, thank you very much. He says, great live stream, man. I appreciate it. And really, really do. So if you'd like to be part of the Political Trade Secrets community, as I said before, you can just go to politicaltradesecrets.com. You can sign up to get exclusive stuff. And then also, Robert asked about, will these programs be posted to our website? They will be. It'll probably be a week or so before we get those up there. But yes, we will make sure we do that. And the way to make sure, I'm going to put these all out later today. If you're on the texting community, you already have received all of our lists. But I send out later in the day the list of all the 7 greats. Whenever we do one of these 7 greats, I just list them in a text message. So if you'd like to text me at 202-918-3345, again, that's 202-918-3345, you can just text me. You'll get a little link that comes back. Once you click that and you opt in, you'll be texting with me or texting with Sean, and you can ask us questions. I had some great conversations with folks yesterday through the text chain, and you're not texting everybody, you're just actually talking to me directly, and it's a great way to do that. But I will be sending out the 7 great follows that we talked about today and making sure that people have that, and then we'll put it on the website later as well. And speaking of texting, as I said earlier, this episode is sponsored by 10centtexting.com. It's by far the best political texting operation out there at the best price, best quality, and it's not any more expensive to be able to send rich media and be able to send GIFs and videos, all those things. It really does make a difference. We've all seen the terrible text messaging that campaigns do, that it's just SMS, just the text, and they spam you. And if you want to do it right and you want to actually have it break through, we're seeing open rates above 90% right now, which is quite remarkable, if you ask me. That you have if you're running for some district and there's 100,000 people that you need to talk to, and 90,000 of those people on their cell phones open your text message, and you present them with something compelling and interesting and valuable to them, can you see just how powerful that is? It is. It's definitely, when you think about David and Goliath, that is definitely a slingshot. If you have 10centtexting.com, so go to 10centtexting.com, launch your message today. Highly recommend that. And of course, if you are seeking to be a political leader yourself, if you want to step up, to speak up and show up as a candidate for office, then join us at olsonstrategies.com. You can email me, Dustin@olsonstrategies.com, or Sean, SEAN, @olsonstrategies.com. And we would love to talk to you about running for office. Even if you aren't 100% sure, we'll walk you through the process. We will not try to convince you to do it. We might even try to convince you not to do it, because ultimately you have to be ready to go and be fully committed to doing that, and we can help you and be a partner in that process to make sure that you ultimately have your vision for our country, for your state, and for your community actually become reality. So with that, thank you very much for being here today. We really do appreciate all of you and your thoughts and your questions. If you are watching this on the replay, please do post your comments or questions, any of the other great follows that you have, and we will respond to you there, and maybe we'll include it in a future update to this episode. But with that, this has been another episode of Political Trade Secrets.
Join us next time by subscribing on iTunes, and get show notes and sign up for our newsletter at politicaltradesecrets.com.